the principles of operation, servicing, and maintenance of a standard rotation gear case. Most outboard gear cases have forward, neutral, and reverse shifting capabilities. However, some smaller outboards have either forward and neutral shifting or direct drive. Outboard models with direct drive only operate in forward gear. 360-degree steering provides reverse operation. Large outboard gear cases are available in standard and counter rotation. Using a counter rotation model on a twin-engine boat reduces steering torque and increases the ability to track straight. You can identify a counter rotation gear case by the letters CR stamped on the end of the propeller shaft. We will use a larger horsepower, standard rotation gear case to discuss principles of operation. However, most of these principles apply to all Evinrude and Johnson models. The primary function of a gear case is to transfer power from the crankshaft to the propeller. The rotating motion of the crankshaft is transferred down the drive shaft to the pinion gear. The pinion gear is splined to the drive shaft and rotates constantly with the crankshaft, driving a set of gears which revolve freely in opposite directions on the propeller shaft. The drive shaft is supported in the gear case by 3 bearings: the bearing in the drive shaft bearing housing and the pinion bearing pressed into the gear case housing hold the drive shaft in position. The thrust bearing is located below the drive shaft bearing housing and supports the vertical thrust of the pinion. The propeller shaft is supported on the front by the forward gear and shift housing assembly, and on the rear by the propeller shaft bearing housing. The propeller shaft bearing housing also supports the reverse gear. The drive shaft and propeller shaft bearing housings are important sealing areas and contain O-rings and seals to prevent water from leaking into or oil from leaking out of the gear case. The clutch dog is splined to the propeller shaft between the forward and reverse gears and slides on the propeller shaft to engage either gear. Both gears and the clutch dog have drive lugs that enable them to engage one another and turn as a unit. The drive lugs must have square corners. Rounded drive lugs can lead to the clutch dog jumping out of gear. If the drive lugs are rounded, replace the damaged parts and try to determine the root cause of the problem. Possible causes of rounded drive lugs include improper shifting, incorrect adjustment of the shift cable, and incorrect shift rod height. In standard rotation gear cases, the gear closest to the front of the gear case housing is the forward gear. When the clutch dog engages this gear, the propeller turns clockwise and pushes the boat forward. The gear closest to the propeller is the reverse gear. When the clutch dog engages this gear, the propeller turns counterclockwise and the boat moves backward. In counter rotation gear cases, the position of the gears is reversed. The shift housing converts vertical motion of the shift rod into horizontal motion of the clutch dog, causing it to engage either the forward or reverse gear. Let's review the shifting operation before moving on. Pulling up on the shift rod causes the clutch dog to slide forward on the propeller shaft until its lugs engage forward gear. Power is transmitted from the pinion gear to the forward gear, then to the clutch dog, and finally to the propeller shaft and propeller. Pushing down on the shift rod causes the clutch dog to slide rearward on the propeller shaft until its lugs engage reverse gear. Because the reverse gear is rotating in the opposite direction, the propeller shaft and propeller will also turn in the opposite direction, causing the boat to move rearward. When shifting into or out of gear, it is important that you move the remote control handle quickly. If you are not quick and positive with your shifting motion, the clutch dog will ratchet or jump while attempting to engage the gear. A ratcheting or jumping clutch dog will damage both the clutch dog and the gear drive lugs. In addition to their load handling and shifting responsibilities, The gear cases on Evinrude and Johnson outboards perform several other functions. The water pump is attached to the top of the gear case housing and circulates water through the outboard to cool the power head. The gear case housing incorporates water pickups to feed the water pump. Most large gear cases are equipped with a trim tab. When correctly adjusted, the trim tab offsets propeller torque, reducing the effort required to steer the boat. New boats often require adjustments to the trim tab. Changing propeller pitch or type may also require changes to the trim tab setting. The adjustment procedure is described in the operator's guide and must be performed under actual operating conditions on the water. When you service a customer's gear case, make a mark on the trim tab and gear case before you remove it. This will allow you to return it to the same position after servicing. Most trim tabs include a water pickup to cool the propeller hub. Water enters the pickup and travels through a passage in the gear case to the exhaust cavity. From there, it flows out of the gear case and over the propeller hub with the exhaust gases. When servicing a gear case, you must follow the correct procedures. A procedure used on one type of gear case may permanently damage another type. Make sure you are using the correct service manual. Some manuals may contain the procedures for several different types of gear cases. Be certain to find and follow the correct procedure. 40 horsepower and larger engines require precise location of the drive shaft pinion to ensure durability under extreme torque loads. The drive shaft pinion is precisely meshed with the forward and reverse gears by using one or more shims between the drive shaft bearing housing and the thrust washer. You must set the gear mesh whenever the drive shaft, gear set, thrust washer, thrust bearing, or drive shaft bearing housing are replaced. These components and the gear case housings are machined to extremely close tolerances. Because of this, only the depth of the drive shaft must be controlled to achieve proper mesh between the gears. A drive shaft shim fixture is available to shim the drive shafts on 40 horsepower and larger two-stroke engines. The drive shaft shim fixture must be used to select the correct number of shims to position the drive shaft pinion accurately in the gear case. When assembling the gear case, the shims must always be located between the drive shaft bearing housing and the thrust washer. Special removal and installation tools are available for servicing gear case seals and bearings. If you fail to use the recommended seal or bearing removal tool, you may damage the housing. In many instances, proper installation of a part can only be assured by using the correct installation tool. The service manual specifies what tools to use for specific applications. Another important service tool, the shift rod height gauge, sets the initial height of the shift rod. If the shift rod height adjustment is overlooked, the gear case will not completely engage both forward and reverse gears. Partial engagement of either gear will cause premature gear case failure. Always verify that the shift rod is adjusted to the correct height before reinstalling a gear case. Bombardier recommends changing a new outboard's gear case lubricant after the first 10 hours of operation. Check the lubricant every 50 hours of operation thereafter. After every 100 hours of operation, or at least once each season, completely drain and refill the gear case. When you drain the gear case, inspect the lubricant. If water has entered the gear case, it will flow out first unless it has been mixed with the oil. Oil mixed with water has a milky appearance. Oil that is black and has a burned odor indicates possible bearing failure, or oil that has not been changed within the recommended service interval. Inspect the magnetic plug for metal particles. Some small fine shavings indicate normal wear. Large particles or excessive shavings indicate a problem, and the gear case should be disassembled and inspected. Outboard gear cases must be filled from the bottom using a pump or pressurized container. Fill the gear case with recommended lubricant until oil comes out of the top lubricant level hole. All Evinrude and Johnson gear cases are connected to the crankshaft by a set of splines located on the top of the drive shaft. The splines provide a positive connection to the crankshaft and allow easy removal of the gear case or power head. These splines will see extreme loads that create high temperatures capable of breaking down an ordinary grease. Before you install the gear case, you should clean and recoat the drive shaft splines liberally with Mollylube. Mollylube has high load-carrying capabilities and can stand up under high temperatures. It is the only grease recommended for outboard drive shaft splines. Before installing a propeller onto the propeller shaft, the shaft should be coated with Triple Guard grease. Triple Guard is a waterproof, anti-corrosion grease that performs very well in this application. Once a season, the propeller should be removed, the propeller shaft cleaned, and Triple Guard grease applied. Anytime a gear case has been reassembled, or if the gear case displays evidence of leakage, its seals should be checked under both pressure and vacuum. The pressure tester determines if oil can leak out of the gear case. The vacuum tester determines if water can leak into the gear case. In some cases, adapters may be required to match the threads in the gear case housing. Most four-strokes require an adapter. For other adapters, consult the appropriate service manual or the Evinrude Johnson Genuine Parts Catalog. Most outboards are equipped with at least one sacrificial anode to protect the outboard from galvanic corrosion. Some larger outboards have several anodes located on the midsection and gear case. Because an anode is a less noble alloy than the aluminum alloy of the gear case housing, the anode erodes away, protecting the outboard. Erosion or disintegration of the anodes indicates the anodes are working. The anodes should be inspected periodically. Any anode that has been reduced to 2/3 of its original size must be replaced. For the anodes to function properly, they must be clean and have a good electrical bond to the outboard. Never paint them. If you suspect an anode is not functioning, use an ohm meter to check for continuity between the anode and its mounting surface. By following proper gear case servicing and maintenance procedures, you can ensure an outboard's performance and durability.